Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Gretchen, and today I'm back with another reading recap. I had got some positive response from the first one that I did last week, so I decided that I would try to continue. And today is Sunday, May 19th, and I had a pretty good reading week. There were a few books that I finished. There are still some books that I am in the midst of, and there are several books that I am just starting to dip my toe into. So I have a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and start with the books that I finished. The first book that I finished is one that I spoke about last week. It was my pick for Misery May, and that is The Mayor of Casterbridge. And although this was my pick for Misery May, I have to say I rather enjoyed this book. This was my first Thomas Hardy. I know that there are other books of his that are more famous, but this was the one that I had on hand, and I just decided, you know what, I will just take a chance on it, and I'm pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed this as much as I did. I really enjoyed Hardy's writing style. I loved the complexity of his characters. I loved how messy everything was and how entangled all of the lives of the characters were, and it was a book that I honestly don't think that I will be able to forget for a while. Now, obviously, there will be details that, you know, eventually lose their freshness in my mind over time, but the basic premise of this story and the plot was very unique, and it's one that is going to stay with me and I'll remember for a while. This book starts with a very interesting scene where our main character, Michael Henchard, he is intoxicated and he is at a local fair, and in a drunken stupor, he decides to sell his wife and his newborn daughter to a total stranger. And after that happens, we then soon come to realize that he realized the error of his ways, and he turns his life around to eventually become the mayor of this town called Casterbridge. And we kind of fast forward 20 years, and we then pick up where his life is kind of put together, and then the arrival of his former wife that he sold comes back into town, and it just precipitates all of these other events. And it was such an interesting story. It was very fascinating, and I am actually really looking forward now to dipping my toes into some other Hardy. I think that he is a great author. This book was well constructed. The language was also very readable. I know that sometimes people get worried or kind of apprehensive about reading classics, but this was very easy to follow, and I really enjoyed myself with this one. So thanks to Gemma at Gem of Books and Scott at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot that host the readathon for Misery May and introducing me to the works of Thomas Hardy. Now, the next book that I finished is one I think I also talked briefly about last week too, and that is Knife by Salman Rushdie. And this was another book that I really enjoyed my reading experience with. So this book accounts the attack that Rushdie suffered in August of 2022, where he was going to be a speaker at a book event in Chautauqua, New York, and he was violently attacked. He was stabbed several times, and in the aftermath of nearly losing his life, he ended up losing an eye, and he also lost some movement abilities within one of his hands as well. So we learn the lead up to the attack in Rushdie's words. We learn about his recovery. We get a lot of intimate knowledge that he didn't have to share with his readers. That was really interesting, and I think I'm actually potentially going to do a full-length review of this, but because I just found it so fascinating, the things that he was sharing sharing. And yeah, this, if you are a fan of Rusdie, I definitely think that this is a book that you would enjoy, not because of the horrible things that happened to him, but the writing is there, the lush, beautiful prose that we expect from Rusdie is translated into a nonfiction narrative, and it was a very engaging and engrossing story, and I am so glad that he had the courage very shortly after this happened, because it's still pretty fresh to write a book like this and be that vulnerable. So yeah, Knife by Salman Rushdie, I definitely think that this is worth a read. So the next book that I want to talk about is one that I actually wasn't planning on reading this week, but I had a hold for the audiobook come in. And for those of you that don't know or follow my channel, I like to read the physical copy along with the audiobook. I have just always liked that immersive experience, and I like the fact that I can read the physical copy, but if I am, running an errand or I have a pocket of time where I can listen, I can continue the story without having to carry a book around with me. So when this hold came in, I know that this is a book I've been looking forward to for a while. I decided that I did want to prioritize it, and that is Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. Now, Tommy Orange wrote a book a few years ago called There There, and it is a book that I absolutely loved. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it before. Tommy Orange is an Indigenous author, and the book follows the lives of these Indigenous people and their struggles and their triumphs and just the complexities of their life. Now, with Wandering Stars, this is a continuation or kind of a prequel, sequel kind of book. And the reason I say that is it's a book that starts out in 1864. So people that are expecting this to just jump off where There ended, you're going to be confused. I was confused. I kept thinking, I thought that this was a follow-up to There. And it is, I promise. You just have to be a little patient. So basically what this book does is it starts in, I believe, the year 1864, and it starts with an Indigenous man, and he goes by the name of Star. And we pick up his story right after the events of the Sand Creek massacre that occurred in Colorado. And from there, we learn about his upbringing, we learn about his life, we learn about him meeting a woman and falling in love and having children, and thus starts the generational story of the families that were in There. And we eventually do, from generation to generation, get back to the same characters, not all of them, but a good bit of them that were present in There. I absolutely love Orange's writing. He has a beautiful way of depicting things and feelings in a very unpretentious and simple way, but the language that he uses is still lush, but it's not over your head, or it's not, like I said, pretentious. It's just a very real language, and I absolutely love his prose. He talks about very difficult subjects. This book tackles, I would say, primarily addiction and the impact that addiction can have on not only the person that is the addict, but also the family that is around them and supporting them. And I just think that this was well done. I absolutely love Tommy Orange as a writer. I'm to the point now where I think this is only his second book. I think There was his debut, but I'm now officially a Tommy Orange fan, and any book that he writes, I will happily pick up. So yeah, this was definitely a hit for me this week as well. And then the last book that I finished was a book for the Women's Prize for Nonfiction, and this was the long-listed title Eve by Cat Bohannan. I am doing a full-length review for this, so I won't give too much away. I really enjoyed this book. It was very interesting. This book basically follows the evolution of the female body, and what Cat Bohannan does is she breaks it up into different chapters, and each of those chapters represents a different part or function of the female body, and she has done her research, and it is a really fascinating and interesting read. And any of you that like science heavy nonfiction, this book is going to be right up your alley. All right, so those are the books that I finished, and there are some books that I had actively been reading before, so I can give a quick update on those too. I am still working my way through Les Mis. I've wrapped up the section on Fantine, and I am now officially in the section that is about Cosette, and I am still enjoying myself with this. And the other book that I have as far as a project goes is The Complete Stories of Clarice Lispector. I read a few additional short stories. I'm still loving her writing style. I'm still finding these stories very interesting, and nothing like major that is standing out, but like I said, I'll keep you up to date if there are any truly standout stories that I run across. I will definitely let you know. And I still have some additional reading going on for the Women's Prize for Fiction, Nonfiction, as well as the Republic of Consciousness shortlist. I haven't read much more on those particular books, and those books are Two Sherpas by Sebastian Martinez Danielle, translated by Jennifer Kraft. It's A Flat Place by Noreen Masud, and A Trace of Sun by Pam Williams. I'm just reading, I think I maybe only finished a few pages in each of these. All is still good. I'm still enjoying them, and I'm still chugging along with them. And then my other book prize book that I was working on was for the International Booker, and that is Mater 2-10. I have made a significant chunk more of progress with this, but once again, I'm enjoying this story. It is just a very slow read for me for some reason. It is definitely not because I'm not having a good time. I really am embracing the story. I think that it is a very ambitious book, and because we're dealing with a piece of translated fiction, this is translated from the Korean, there's a lot of similarities in names and locations and things like that, and I think that because of that, it's almost like if you've ever read like Tolstoy or Dostoevsky, where you have people that have, 20 different names for the same person. It's kind of like that, but we're talking about different people, but their names are so similar. I'm having a very hard time keeping things straight. So I often find myself reading a few pages and then almost having to go back. I read 5 pages, but I have to go back 8 to figure out who this person was, and it's just taking me a little more time. I'm still enjoying myself with it, but I'm honestly not sure if I'll actually have this finished by the time they announce the winner on Tuesday, but I'm going to do my best. Now, the other International Booker shortlisted titles I also started reading this past week. So even though I'm not 100% sure if I will get through the entire shortlist by the time they announce the winner, I think I do have a pretty good sense of what my enjoyment level is going to be for all of these books. And even though things could obviously change, you know, sometimes I'll read a book and I'm really enjoying it and then it tanks in the last, you know, quarter of the book. I'm not seeing that happening with these ones. So I feel pretty comfortable about doing a prediction video, which you should be seeing shortly after this one. But the two other shortlisted titles that I have started to read is Crooked Plow by Itamar Vieira Jr. And this is translated from the Spanish by Johnny Lorenz. This book is really fascinating. It is a book that I knew was going to be magical realism, so I am really enjoying this so far, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be a book that I end up enjoying in the end. And then the other one that I have started is What I'd Rather Not Think About by Jente Posthuma, and this is translated from the Dutch by Sarah Timmer Harvey, and I am enjoying this book too. This book it's about a tough subject. We have twins and her brother has recently committed suicide. So it's a reflection on their childhood, their adult lives, you know, what led up to everything. I haven't got terribly far into it, but what I do like about this is it's a fast-paced read. It's doing work on a very tough subject, but it's doing it with respect and sensitivity, and I'm really liking the author's approach to handling such a tough subject. And also it's in the style of little vignettes. So it's a quick read. I honestly think that if I could, you know, find a, you know, pocket of a few hours that I could likely fly through this book because it is so interesting. But yeah, another hit from the short list so far. I have previously mentioned that I struggled with the long list in general, but I am happy to say that so far the shortlist books have delivered for me. So they may not have got it right for the long list, but they definitely redeemed themselves with the shortlist. So now I just want to take a couple minutes to talk about the books that I have recently started or I am about to start. And then there are a couple books that I haven't started yet, but I just got from the library, and they are books that I am going to try to finish hopefully by the end of May. So the first book that I want to talk about, and once again, this is the book I have been most excited to read the entire year, and that is James by Percival Everett. I finally got my copy. I'm so excited, and as soon as I got it, I immediately started to read it. I'm not very far into it, but I am loving this book so far. It is hitting all my marks. Everything that I love about Percival Everett's works and all of his hallmarks are there already, even though we're just a few chapters in. It's witty, it's intelligent. I love the work that he is doing with the characters, and if this book doesn't end up being 5 stars for me, I will be extremely shocked. This is definitely reading so far for me like a 5-star read, so I certainly hope that that keeps up. Now, there are a couple other books I just want to talk about real quick. I do follow some reading challenges on Storygraph. There are 2 specific ones that I will talk about here because they're kind of monthly based. There is one that is hosted by Simon Savage at Savage Reads, and they do a monthly prompt, and this prompt is a book that is written by an author that shares the same first name as you. My first name is Gretchen, so I don't have very many options. As I was looking into what books I wanted to read, I kind of struggled until I stumbled upon this one. It's called Because Internet: Understanding the New Rules of Language by Gretchen McCulloch, and this just sounds really interesting. It's a nonfiction book, and basically it's a way of looking at how our lives in technology, how our life has become so dependent on the digital world of texts and emails, how that has shaped our language. And I'm a word nerd. I also love tech as well, so this is right up my alley. It was written a few years ago, and I'll be honest, I haven't heard of this book before, so I was very happy to stumble upon it. So this is a book that I will be hopefully finishing by the end of May to fulfill that prompt. And then we have Ben at Ben Reads Good. He has a reading challenge on Storygraph as well, and this month's prompt is magical realism. So it is to read a book that is focusing on magical realism or has magical realism elements in it. Now, I had originally planned on reading The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida. I still may do that one, but I might have to cheat and swap out that book for Crooked Plow, just because I'm not sure if I'll have time to read The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida. I still want to read that book very much, but I may have to, like I said, switch gears. So far, I think my plan for that one is going to be to use Crooked Plow, but who knows, you might hear me talk about The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida in my next video if I do decide to pick that one up. And then last but not least, I just want to talk about another hold from the library that came in that I just think sounds really interesting. It is The Cemetery of Untold Stories by Julia Alvarez. So this book follows our main character. She's an author, and she inherits a plot of land, and what she decides to do is use that land and build a cemetery for all of the unfinished manuscripts and stories that she has never been able to get off the ground, because she is haunted every day by those stories that she was never able to make come to light. And I just think that this book sounds so unique, so interesting, and it sounds like it's a bit whimsical, and it sounds like it's just gonna be one of those books that once I get into it, I am just absolutely going to fly through it. So I am very much looking forward to getting to this one. Now, I have a lot of books to still read. May has been a really interesting month as far as reading goes. There is a lot going on. We are starting to wrap up the book prizes that are actively going. Like I said, the International Booker is being announced on the 21st, which is just 2 days. It's going to be on Tuesday, and I will be doing my prediction video soon, as I mentioned, and the Women's Prize winners are just going to be very much around the corner. They're not being announced until June. I think it's, if I'm thinking correctly, it's sometime the first week of June. So June sounds like it's so far away, but it's really not. We just have a couple weeks to go with that one as well. Still a lot of prize-related content to come. Thanks for listening to me chat about my book week. I know I've got a lot of books going on, and I know these videos tend to be longer, so I appreciate you staying with me, and until we read again, bye.